When I did a site visit of a family that everyone said couldn't go home. They were living in extraordinary poverty, extraordinary. And the doctors wanted this kid to be placed. I said, baloney, let me go out and look. And their apartment was in the back of like a courtyard. It was pretty spooky. And on the way back there were all these wires. The whole place was jerry-rigged, not this family's apartment so much, but the whole building was. So you had to duck under the wires, and you had to really crawl around. And I remember almost leaning over to pet what I thought was a cat and, be really accepted by the family. Only when I got closer, I saw it was a rat. So that was not a good time. But the child received the most majestic love and care. Once I got in there, I realized this was nirvana. It's not, you can get what they need to teach you. You just have to have it here. Then you're clay to be molded. So they all were pressuring me to say, even I as a parent don't think this is safe. It was marvelous. It was a home filled with love, but the pantry was empty. I was coming up on Thanksgiving, and Jonathan had just switched schools. And I felt like this very affluent group of kids has no idea what that apartment looks like. And it's not to be just a lesson, it's that you have to start giving when you're younger. You have to understand that concept. So I went to the school and I said, can we do it? And first of all, they said no, because I wanted to bring some of the kids along. And that was a bad idea. They were right to say no. But their director of development was a social worker. And she was so thrilled with this idea. And there was one other teacher who was so thrilled with this idea that they agreed to collect all the goodies. And we packaged it together. My deal was whoever volunteered, I would buy pizza for. And we got to bring some very hungry families Thanksgiving who wouldn't have otherwise had it. The first year there were 5 turkeys and 5 turkey dinners. And I did all the delivery because it was after hours and I had nobody else to take because I was going into rather hairy neighborhoods and some of the other staff was scared. So I did those solo, and I guess it was upsetting to people, but it just made sense to me. And next year it was 10 turkeys, and somebody said, I want to come along. I said, fine, I'm glad to have the company. And meanwhile, you know that we didn't have GPSs, so Eve would map out my every step and try and guide me to the most difficult areas first, but to make sense out of the travels. Plus I had to be, solo. I had to leave the car. That year I didn't have to leave the car. There were 2 of us. It went quicker, but we went into some pretty rough places because our entire target group was people who wouldn't have Thanksgiving. So it wasn't the families that were okay that were getting Thanksgiving. So that year we had 10 turkeys and we had 10 deliveries. It was 4 boroughs at the time. We didn't do Staten Island. Somebody brought one out to Staten Island from the staff, but that was during the day. So I had 10 turkeys, and we started at about 5:30 at night and we finished at 5:30 in the morning. But we were hilarity. There was hilarity all around. It was the best feeling from watching the children understand that they were preparing meals for people who wouldn't otherwise eat, which was a very strange concept. For understanding that this was even more special because these children had disabilities, so they gave them a family party. And the kids were so touched by that. They weren't jaded. So they asked me all the questions about Skip, why I do this. They wanted to know where Jonathan was. I said, he'll make an appearance. He helps me a lot. And it was really a big eye-opener for the school, that they weren't doing enough they were doing enough in terms of international culture, but not difference culture. So they would ask me to speak at assemblies and talk about this, and it became part of their routine. And then that teacher left, and they weren't willing to do it anymore because both the development person and the teacher left. So I don't know what they do for community outreach anymore, because obviously he's not in school there anymore. But it was so meaningful that some of the kids who grew up, I still have memories of their sweet little faces when we were doing that. And the first year we broke off from the school, we found a place to donate 30 turkeys. At that point I was still doing, 20, I'm sorry. 20 turkeys. So we went from 10 to 20, and I was still doing it solo with this other person. And we went to a place in Red Hook, which was supposedly the most dangerous development in Red Hook, project in Red Hook. Hunger is hunger. I mean, we have hunger in this country. That was so weird to me. And I thought of my wonderful family in the Bronx. I said, this lit them up. It was more important to see somebody do outreach to them because they saw me as a bit of contention because I was going there to evaluate them, supposedly, which I never did because it was just so stupid. This family was perfect. And instead of trying to move the family so they could calm down, they just wanted to make sure that, they had no liability. That was the real issue. And that, this family could manage. They could more than manage. They were magnificent. And the faces was, I came in as sort of on a mission. I came back with a meal. That was huge for them. And then it just became something that meant more to me than our own Thanksgiving dinner, which was filled with contention and family members, which we don't do anymore. But my own personal family, where there was always an argument about this, and it's like you wouldn't take a leg and smack someone and say, you understand where I was yesterday or the day before yesterday? And it was so important. And then people sort of wanted to do more. And that last year we did 20. We started out in Red Hook. And the person that was with me said, you're going to get me killed. Do you understand where I'm? I said, look, hunger is hunger. You wanted to do this. You know that we have families here. I'm going in there. And she said to me, you're white and stupid, and you will never come out alive. I said, watch me. She said, make the family come out. I know this neighborhood. I've heard the stories. You don't even know what you're walking into. And I said, oh, give me a break. I'm not going to not feed this family. You don't know what's in their cupboards. You don't know what they're relying on. This is crazy. We're going in. She said, leave me the keys to your car, which I thought was so idiotic because you're much more likely to get hurt if you're, car napped than you are walking down the street. So I needed help getting the packages in. And there was a drug dealer on the corner, and he was standing with his girlfriend. And I said, you and I both know I don't belong here. But I'm not here to hurt anyone. I need to bring them Thanksgiving dinner, and they won't have it unless I do this. And he looked at me and said, go ahead, you're safe. And his girlfriend slugged him like this and said, help her, carry those things. Get her in there. And I walked into the courtyard, And every single apartment had a Venetian blind, and they were all lifting them up and looking out. Like, we all knew I didn't belong there, but what were the boxes? And this guy yells, "She's with me!" And they all dropped their Venetian blinds. And in we went, and we delivered the food. And when we got there, Mom's shoulder was in a cast. She had had surgery on a rotator cuff. She couldn't handle cooking Thanksgiving, so the girlfriend was there of the drug dealer, and they said they would all have Thanksgiving together. So that was another community connection. That's what gives you the gas in your tank when you see that happening. This family that was relatively isolated had a community connection, probably not the most savory community connection, but it was marvelous, and that became part of what we did. So I got back to the car, and the person who was with me was like, "Are you freaking crazy?" I said that was the most magical moment. So we keep going, and she doesn't kick up a fuss, but she's supposed to be reading Eve's, map that he did for us in our directions. So finally, after we had done all the boroughs, we were headed back to the Bronx, which is where she lived, and we had one last family to deliver to. I'm saying to her, "You do home visits to this place. Why are you getting us so lost?" So she says to me, "It's nap time for me." It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. I said, "Wake up, this is the last one." She said, "Well, the truth of the matter is, I don't know where I am." I said, "You never know where you are. Why don't you know where you are?" She said, "Because when I take the bus," she gave me the number, "I sit backwards, so I can only tell the landmarks." I said, "All right, you are making me crazy." I stopped the car. I made her sit in the back seat, kneel on the seat so she could see everything going backwards. We finally got there. I said, it was right around the Throgs Neck Bridge, and there's a project underneath there. I had to make her sit going backwards so we could find the place. Then we finished, and I took her home. She said, "I don't think I'm coming out again next year," but sure enough, every year after, she was out. I stopped doing the delivery because the staff said, "It's not fair, you have all the fun." So I like doing the setup of it. It's almost as good as having your own Thanksgiving, being a part of so many Thanksgivings. Last year was so poignant for the families that got Thanksgiving, because the folks who donate, Interstate, who donates the turkeys, they knew how badly our families were hit, because the storm had just come, and so many of our families were in desperate shape, that we got 100 turkeys last year. Touched to the core, to the very core. Every person who participates, now we have the building here participating, I just want to hug them all, because they don't realize the magnitude of their generosity, but it's so poignant to me. It's so easy to think that this is silly. Everyone in America can go to a food pantry or have food, but that's not the case. If you're caring for a child, like some of our kids, you can't get out, you can't get access. So one meal a year, we know that their tummies are full and they have celebration and community. And it's really something.